Books on Tape presents My Life by William Jefferson Clinton, Volume 2, read by Michael Beck, with the epilogue read by the author.
Chapter 30. On Sunday, January 17th, Al and Tipper Gore, Hillary, and I began inaugural week with a tour of Monticello, followed by a discussion of Thomas Jefferson's importance to America with young people. After the event, we boarded our bus for the 120-mile trip to Washington. The bus symbolized our commitment to giving the federal government back to the people. Besides, we cherished the fond memories it held, and we wanted one last ride. We stopped for a brief church service in the pretty Shenandoah Valley town of Culpeper, then made our way to Washington. Just as in the campaign, there were well-wishers and a few critics along the way. By the time we got to the Capitol, the public events of our inaugural, entitled An American Reunion, New Beginnings, Renewed Hope, were already underway. Harry Thomason, Rahm Emanuel, and Mel French, a friend from Arkansas who would become chief of protocol in my second term, had organized an extraordinary series of events, with as many as possible free of charge or within the price range of the working people who had elected me. On Sunday and Monday, the mall between the Capitol building and the Washington Monument was filled by an outdoor festival featuring food, music, and crafts. That night we had a call for reunion concert on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial with a star-studded lineup including Diana Ross and Bob Dylan, who thrilled the crowd of 200,000 that filled the space from the stage all the way back to the Washington Monument. Standing beneath Lincoln's statue, I gave a short speech appealing for national unity, saying that Lincoln gave new life to Jefferson's dream that we are all created free and equal. After the concert, the Gores and my family led a procession of thousands of people carrying flashlights across the Potomac River on Memorial Bridge to the Lady Bird Johnson Circle just outside Arlington National Cemetery. At 6 p.m., we rang a replica of the Liberty Bell to start Bells of Hope ringing all across America and even aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour. Then there was a fireworks display followed by several receptions. By the time we got back to Blair House, the official guest residence just across the street from the White House, we were tired but exhilarated, and before falling asleep, I took some time to review the latest draft of my inaugural address. I still wasn't satisfied with it. Compared with my campaign speeches, it seemed stilted. I knew it had to be more dignified, but I didn't want it to drag. I did like one passage, built around the idea that our new beginning had forced the spring to come to America on this cold winter day. It was the brainchild of my friend Father Tim Healy, former president of Georgetown University. Tim had died suddenly of a heart attack while walking through Newark Airport a few weeks after the election. When friends went to his apartment, they found in his typewriter the beginning of a letter to me that included suggested language for the inaugural speech. His phrase, "forced the spring," struck all of us, and I wanted to use it in his memory. Monday, January 18th, was the holiday celebrating Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. In the morning, I held a reception for the diplomatic representatives of other nations in the inner quadrangle at Georgetown, addressing them from the steps of Old North Building. It was the same spot on which George Washington stood in 1797, and the great French general and Revolutionary War hero Lafayette spoke in 1824. I told the ambassadors that my foreign policy would be built on 3 pillars: economic security at home, restructuring the armed forces to meet the new challenges of the post-Cold War world, and support for democratic values across the globe. The day before, President Bush had ordered an airstrike on a suspected weapons production site in Iraq, and on this day, U.S. planes hit Saddam Hussein's air defense positions. I supported the effort to bring Sodom into full compliance with UN resolutions and asked the diplomats to emphasize that to their governments. After the diplomatic event, I spoke to Georgetown students and alumni, including many of my old classmates, urging them to support my national service initiative. From Georgetown, we drove to Howard University for a ceremony honoring Dr. King, then to a luncheon at the beautiful Folger Library for more than 50 people Al, Tipper, Hillary, and I met during the campaign, who had made a strong impression on us. We called them Faces of Hope because of their courage in the face of adversity or their innovative ways of dealing with contemporary challenges. We wanted to thank these people for inspiring us and to remind everyone amidst the glamour of the inaugural week that a lot of Americans were still having a hard time. The Faces of Hope included 2 former members of rival gangs in Los Angeles who joined forces after the riots to give kids a better future, 2 of the Vietnam veterans who had sent me their medals, a school principal who had created a violence-free magnet school in Chicago's highest crime neighborhood with students who regularly scored above state and national learning levels, a Texas judge who had created an innovative program for troubled kids, a young Arizona boy who had made me more aware of the family pressures caused by the extra hours his father had to work, a Native American doctor from Montana who worked to improve mental health services to her people, men who had lost their jobs to low-wage foreign competition, people struggling with costly health problems the government didn't help with, a young entrepreneur scrapping for venture capital, people who ran community centers for broken families, a policeman's widow whose husband was killed by a mental patient who bought a handgun without a background check, an 18-year-old financial wizard who was already working on Wall Street, a woman who had started a large recycling program at her plant, and many others. Michael Morrison, the young man who drove his wheelchair down an icy New Hampshire highway to work for me, was there. So was Demetrius Theophanis, the Greek immigrant from New York, who had asked me to make his boy free. All of the Faces of Hope had taught me something about the pain and promise of America in 1992, but none more than Louise and Clifford Ray, whose 3 sons were hemophiliacs who had contracted the HIV virus through transfusions of tainted blood. They also had a daughter who was not infected. Frightened people in their small Florida community pushed to have the Ray boys removed from school, fearing that their children could be infected if one of them started bleeding and the blood got on them. The Rays filed a lawsuit to keep the kids in class and settled it out of court, then decided to move to Sarasota, a larger city, where the school officials welcomed them. The oldest son, Ricky, was obviously very ill and fighting to hang on to his life. After the election, I called Ricky in the hospital to encourage him and invite him to the inauguration. He was looking forward to coming, but he didn't make it. At 15, he lost his fight, just 5 weeks before I became president. I was so glad that the Rays came to the luncheon anyway. When I took office, they championed the cause of hemophiliacs with AIDS and successfully lobbied Congress for the passage of the Ricky Ray Hemophilia Relief Fund. But it took 8 long years, and their grief still wasn't over. In October 2000, 3 months before the end of my presidency, the Rays' second son, Robert, died of AIDS at 22. If only antiretroviral therapy had been available a few years earlier. Now that it is, I spend a lot of time trying to get the medicine to many of the Ricky Rays across the world. I want them to be Faces of Hope, too. On Tuesday morning, Hillary and I started the day with a visit to the graves of John and Robert Kennedy at Arlington National Cemetery. Accompanied by John Kennedy, Jr., Ethel Kennedy, several of her children, and Senator Ted Kennedy, I knelt at the eternal flame and said a short prayer, thanking God for their lives and service and asking for wisdom and strength in the great adventures just ahead. At noon, I hosted a lunch for my fellow governors at the Library of Congress, thanking them for all I had learned from them in the past 12 years. After an afternoon of
Sample complete. Ready to continue?